Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. This is my first trip to the aisle, so thank you very much for having me. My name is Bruce Fenton. The Bitcoin Association is a nonprofit industry group that focuses on education and advocacy for businesses, charities, and individuals around the world. And we work with some of the other groups. I'm a member of many of the other foundations and associations in this space, and many of us are working on a lot of the same goals. My background is from the investment business. I founded Atlantic Financial, which is an investment firm and was the first full-service investment firm to use the internet back in 1994. So I've seen this kind of thing before. There's a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities, and many of us in this space saw these same kind of things happen in the internet. Jeremy Allaire, who is a leading CEO from one of the best funded and most innovative Bitcoin companies, Circle Financial, often talks about the parallels between the early days of the internet and now. So I'll talk a little bit about where we are now and where I see us going in the future. And I'll also talk a little bit about regulation, because that is something that's on everyone's mind here and in the United States and around the world. And then I'll leave plenty of time for questions. The future for Bitcoin is really exciting. And let me make one distinction before I continue. When I say Bitcoin, I'm really talking about the technology as a whole, not necessarily the Bitcoin itself, the currency, although I think that's very important. Even our association, our mission is to have this advocacy for Bitcoin and related technologies. So you hear about all of these other altcoins. I don't really view us as being in competition, and I know many of the other people, including those who have developed these coins. The second most popular coin, or it changes often, but one of the most popular coins is Litecoin, and the creator of that works at a company that called Coinbase, which is a major Bitcoin company. And Ethereum, which some people mistake as a coin, which isn't really a coin, it's more of a platform to allow people to develop their own tools using blockchain technology. The founder of Ethereum was the founder of Bitcoin magazine, and the founder of Dogecoin is very active in Bitcoin. So there's a lot of interrelated people in this space, and I don't view it as competition. We may be wrong about what happens with Bitcoin. I believe Bitcoin, the currency, is going to be globally transformative and absolutely change the world as we know it. And people talk about things like completely disrupting banks, completely disrupting governments, and maybe that will be the case, changing the model. It doesn't need to do any of those things to be absolutely amazing and disruptive. Even if it, in all of its existence, only captures 1% of the equivalent of 1% of the internet sales in the United States, you're looking at something hundreds of times bigger than what it is. If in all of its existence, it only captures the size of half of a broken third world economy's currency, you're looking at a massive, massive difference. And I think it will do at least that. I think it will at the very, very least grow to be the size of an important company on the order of a Facebook or an Apple. In any of these scenarios, you certainly don't have to have some of the real diehard people in the Bitcoin space think it's going to completely wipe out governments or banks or something like that. It doesn't have to come anywhere near that to be massively disruptive to the way that we do things in the world. And even if we who believe that Bitcoin is the future are wrong, the technology is here to stay. It took me a little while. Many people join Bitcoin in a speculative way. I did the same, and I didn't really get the technology. I bought it because I thought it might go up. That was it. It took a little while to realize this is an invention. It is an invention that enables you to do things that could not be done before. I can have paper wallets that I can keep in my pocket, that I can protect with a password, and I can have a duplicate of those at home, and I could carry $100,000 with zero risk that anyone will steal it from me, because if they stole it, they wouldn't have the password. And if they did, I could call someone I trust who has those, and they could take them, and I could tell them the password. I could give it to somebody else. I don't even need to trust them. I could call them up, tell them the password, and they could, or give me the copies, and I still know the password, and without any risk of ever losing that money. And if I want to use it, I can transfer it to someone by simply scanning that code into my phone and sending it instantly anywhere in the world. I did an experiment on Facebook, and I sent 85 people around the world $1 each in Bitcoin. And it took me 15 minutes of my time. It took a little while took more time for people to get a Bitcoin address. These were all newcomers. It took a little while for them to get the address, but once they had it, my own time was 15 minutes. Try doing that at a bank. Go to a bank and say, I want to send 85 people money. It's absolutely, completely disruptive technology that can do many, many things that could not be done before. And that is globally transformative. That's a really, really big deal. And all of these things that can be built on top of the blockchain, things like Ethereum and smart contracts, and we could go on for hours. These things are here to stay. It is an invention that is here. It is just like the internet. When I started at Atlantic Financial, there was a conference, before conferences like this, they didn't even exist, but eventually there was conferences like this, and people asked the same questions. They agonized, they spent hours about it. Can this work? Is this serious? Is this just another ham radio? Will people really do real transactions? Will anyone ever actually trust using their credit card on the internet? Well, certainly maybe people might do comic books or something on the internet, maybe the geeks, but it's only a small, narrow demographic. You're never going to get serious money on there. You're never going to have a real investment firm on there. That's how it was easy for us to be first. So we had these same debates, and it was a lot of wasted time because ideas whose time has come cannot be stopped. Governments can't stop them, people can't stop them. They're here. It's an idea. It's an idea that is vastly superior to anything that we've seen before. And it's here to stay. It's going to create jobs. And the best and brightest people in the world are doing this. We have people leaving companies like Google and Facebook. Ben Davenport, a senior person from Facebook. You have people like Jeremy Allaire, who I just mentioned, who ran a publicly traded company that he created. Him and his co-founder left and went and did a Bitcoin company.
Mike Hearn, Google.
There you go, Mike Hearn. Michael Dell has jumped on this with Dell Computer accepting Bitcoin. Patrick Byrne from Overstock, $1 billion publicly traded company, is all over Bitcoin. He spoke at the Bitcoin Foundation annual meeting. Of course, his store accepts Bitcoin and keeps the Bitcoin that they sell the product with. And now, just yesterday, they announced that they're going to take a portion of that and put it back into the Bitcoin community for education purposes. Tiger Direct, the list goes on and on. What's that?
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson, Mark Andreessen, who basically created Netscape, which is and Mozilla, which is the predecessor to pretty much all the browsers that we use today, and cloud computing, and the backers of Facebook and Twitter. The list goes on and on. These people are all behind this. This is happening now. It's not going to happen. It is happening. It is an idea whose time has come. It is vastly superior. It disrupts areas that are ripe for disruption, like banking, which hasn't had innovations in decades. And so it's here, and it's going to create a lot of jobs. And it's the only question that every individual and business person and member of government has is how much they want to participate. Do they want to try and stand in the way, or do they want to try and embrace it? That's really the only question. Which brings me to this point about regulation. It's very difficult to regulate these kind of things because the nature of the technology is such that if I create a business here in Isle of Man, and that business is legal, and that it's legal for that business to have a Bitcoin wallet, how does another jurisdiction differentiate the wallet in my pocket between United States money, Bruce Fenton's money, or this business's money? Or if I set it up in Ras Al Khaimah or some other place? It can't be, because all of the traditional things, the way that we think of tracking money and having it tied to identities and numbers and certifications and stamps and all of these things is gone. So the regulation is very, very, very difficult. And then we should also ask, even if you could regulate it effectively, it's important to, we get so caught up in our day-to-day lives and our businesses of saying things like, taking things like AML compliance as just a fact of life. But it is important as citizens for us to sometimes step back and say, well, wait a minute. What is the reason for these things? Yesterday in the example, we had the speaker who went through all of these examples on the dark web of all these horrible things. And the overwhelming implication is that crime is horrible and we must stop crime. And I would just alter that slightly. I wouldn't say crime is horrible. I would say ask what the crime is. If I say to you, are criminals bad? The answer shouldn't be yes. Because most of human history, criminals have been people like those who helped aid runaway slaves. Martin Luther was a criminal. George Washington was a criminal. George Washington was a terrorist. You have to ask, what is the crime? What is the crime? There's times in history where not growing a mustache is a crime. By some, I believe there was at least a couple people who had a pint, perhaps, last night. Is that a rumor that is correct? That is illegal. You are a criminal by certain society standards. Many of the reasons that Isle of Man exists is because there are things that are legal here with gaming and other things which are considered criminal elsewhere. And if the law changes tomorrow and makes something that you're doing today a criminal act tomorrow, does that make you a bad person? No, it doesn't. You have to ask and take a step back and say, wait a minute, what is morality? What is right and wrong? Evil is the enemy, not crime, because crime is only what a politician says is crime. And there's a lot of silly crimes out there. And there has been throughout human history. So, so let's say, take a step back and say, let's fight evil. So on that example from the dark web examples, many of those crimes don't have a victim. My personal belief, and you can make your own belief, but it's worth making, is to say, what is evil? To me, it's very simple. It's if someone harms the life, liberty, or property of another person who has not harmed them and it's not in defense, that's evil. If you hurt somebody, punch someone, steal from them, that's evil. Now, ironically, governments are often the ones that are doing that. They are harming unprovoked, not in defense. They're saying, look, you've got to comply with this, and if you don't, we're going to put you in a cage, we're going to handcuff you, we're going to beat you. Fortunately, here in Isle of Man, I've been very impressed to see, as has been said earlier, the government is much more in line with the people, and I think that's key. It's unusual in the world. It's certainly not the case, sadly, in my home in America and other places in the world that we travel to. So that's a strength of yours that you should play on, and maybe even take it one step further and ask those tough questions. And when it comes to things like the banking regulations and whether banks are allowed to accept Bitcoin, really identify who the specific, not in vague terms of government bodies and who is relating to who, but actual specific people. Say, who is the actual person or people who are responsible for these decisions, and how can you work with them? Can you work with them? I have no idea. I don't even know who these people are. That would be for you to do. But I can tell you from my experience in dealing with a lot of regulators, I've dealt with some very well-meaning regulators who just need a little bit of education, who haven't thought these things through. They haven't thought these issues through about what is the moral reason for this law and what is the downside. I ask a lot of times when I'm talking to regulators if they say, well, this is horrible. It's horrible that people are buying forbidden plants online. And I say, okay, let's take that argument, but how many jobs is it worth to stop that? How many jobs is it worth it for you to have someone comply with this piece of paperwork? Because you need to quantify these things. I'm not here to debate whether one is right or wrong, but if those who don't quantify these things are doing themselves a disservice. And some regulators can be very easy to work with in terms of educating them about the potential of this and getting them to think about things, and also using this technology as solutions to their problems. There are all kinds of things that can be done with blockchain technology to verify, make audits easier, replace old and antiquated systems with much more superior systems. So that's very exciting, and it's got a lot of potential. Now, the flip side of that, there's some regulators, like we have one in New York, who are not motivated by what's right. They're motivated by their own career, their own motivations like that, and those people should be called out as well and challenged, and there should be pushback, because we're all in this together, and we have very, very exciting technology, and there's a huge amount of upside. There's no doubt about that. And you don't want to be in a position where anyone is standing in the way of ideas or innovation. So that's just what I would say about regulation. And I think that the bigger message is the future for this technology in the world, in developing markets. I haven't even touched on developing markets. That's an area that I focus on. It would take a lot more time, but the ability for this technology to transform lives, for us it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing that people can make a lot of money in it, perhaps, be an exciting field, make things easier. For some people in the world, it's a matter of life and death. It can really, truly transform their lives, because the ability for them to control their own money when although I can complain about, for example, my own government, compared to the situation that some people have in the world, it's an absolute necessity for them to break free of the controls that they've been under and have more control of their own destiny. And this technology can do that. It can do a lot of other things. So it's very exciting, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really thrilled to see the attitude that the government officials here in the aisle have in welcoming people and being friendly and working in a cooperative way with the people who are already here. It's really exciting, and it's a great model of competition that I would like to see a lot more in the world, throughout the world. The whole world can learn something from the Isle of Man, and hopefully that will be in trying to emulate what you're doing with being a leader in Bitcoin. So I think I may have some time for one or two questions. Thank you very much.
I wonder if you care to make a few comments about the future of virtual currency in the charitable and fundraising sectors, which I understand you have a big role in.
Sure. Yeah, there's kind of two different things to look at. The question is about charitable and fundraising sectors. There's a couple different really interesting aspects. There's three aspects of this technology. One is in governance of organizations. The Bitcoin Association has pledged to become a fully decentralized organization. We plan to build a platform off of this company Ethereum that I mentioned, which would govern our organization. It's a little easier said than done. This is very, very, very cutting edge stuff. It hasn't really, honestly, been done successfully, but we've made that pledge. We hope that within a year or so, it will be done. And in the meantime, we're going to make whatever smaller steps we can. With my election as president, for example, we are going to be completely transparent about that in the future. I may be the last president the organization has. In an ideal world, if you look at the way that a nonprofit organization, and this doesn't have to be a Bitcoin organization, it could be an organization that is designed to dig wells in Africa or provide crayons to school children or whatever. Any nonprofit organization, or any organization at all for that matter, and I think David will probably touch on this kind of thing, can be decentralized and using this technology, and I won't get too much into the details of it, but that's one aspect. Another aspect is the aspect of how easy it makes Bitcoin to give to charities, and also direct giving. I'm very interested in that aspect, where you have the ability to cut out the middleman. You know, services like Kickstarter and some of these other things have shown the ability to cut out middlemen in some ways and have money given right to the creators, and that's very powerful. So I see the future of giving being websites where you can go on, and instead of giving it to some nameless, faceless group with billions of dollars and high-paid executives, you give it right to the people. And why can't you do that now? The only reason is technology limitations. But people would be able to go on there and say, hey, I'm a farmer, I need $30 for seed, and I'm poor, and here's my here's who I am. You kind of have to trust me on it. Or I need $500,000. So you're probably going to want to see my financial statements. Here, I've uploaded them. You're going to have an upvote, downvote system, just like Reddit or any number of things. So that's item number two. And item number three is sort of development. The potential of this technology to transform developing and very poor countries where people don't have bank accounts. There's 2 billion people who don't have bank accounts. They can't get bank accounts. For the first time in human history, they are on the same financial system as all of the people in this room, and some very, very wealthy people. Some of these people we mentioned, like Mark Andreessen and Richard Branson, billionaires, are on the same financial system as the poorest people, because there are very poor people, and some of whom I sent the $1 in Bitcoin, where they're now on the same platform. And that's exciting, and that's transformative. So they are not, it is very, very, very difficult You notice when you go into the money changer at Heathrow, it only lists 15 or so currencies. You know, there's a lot more currencies than that. There's a lot of currencies. You can't even change your money. You have to change it to something else first. You have to change it to Thai baht or something else. Then you can change it into euros or pounds or dollars. You're that far removed from the financial system, and that's assuming you can even do things like get on a plane and stuff like that. So it's really a huge barrier to these people. You know, we can have a healthy debate in the U.S. about government roles, but in some of these places, it's not much of a debate. There are very bad governments out there who oppress the people and have horrible monetary policy. Some currencies have even fallen out of existence. So it offers a lot of potential. And the other one area related to that is remittances. Remittances is a multi-billion dollar annual enterprise. And some of these very poor people who are working as guest workers are being charged very high percentages. Bitcoin will be able to enable them to transfer money home, have their family either convert it back to their local currency or stay on this financial platform and be able to use it anywhere from Dell to Overstock. It's transformative. It's a big deal. Yes?
Are you running any educational programs for the, let's call them more extreme governments, such as Honduras, Venezuela, Bangladesh, etc.? My group is not. There's a loose affiliation of a few different groups, and I think that some of those are, particularly some of the Latin American groups. The nice thing about Bitcoin is, and there's a great line, Gavin Andreessen, who is the core developer, basically, of Bitcoin code, had a quote, which I sort of paraphrased the other day, which basically said, I don't want to misquote him, but the gist of it was, you don't need permission to do this stuff. So the interesting thing is, in all of these places all over the world, people can just crop up with ideas. You don't need to go to any association or foundation or group. You don't need permission. You can just do it. So there's all kinds of initiatives like that. And that's what's really exciting about it. Anybody can do it. There's a lot of people. There's a couple right in this room who have just said, hey, I'm going to educate people about Bitcoin. It may be a commercial venture. It may be something they do as a labor of love. I do some videos just because I really like talking about Bitcoin, and when I have some spare time on the rare times that I'm home for a little while, I have a colleague and we can knock out 10 videos in an hour, and then I post one a week for 10 weeks, and it gives the illusion that I've worked a lot harder at it than I have. But there's all kinds of initiatives like that. If you go on YouTube and you go into any of these countries or markets, you see somebody who's doing something. And one of the most exciting things for me in this space is we see a lot of each other, those of us who do a lot of these conferences, but it's really exciting to see completely new people who have not only, especially if you see them at a conference and they're kind of interested, and then you see them 6 months later and they've just done something. You don't need permission, you don't need a license, you can just do it. So there's all kinds of neat educational initiatives that are all over the place doing things.